വിജിലൻസ് അന്വേഷണ സാധ്യത പരിശോധിക്കണമെന്ന് സ്റ്റേറ്റ് കമ്മീഷൻ വാങ്ങിയെങ്കിൽ തെറ്റ്. അങ്ങനെ കമ്മീഷൻ വാങ്ങുന്ന പദ്ധതി ഇതുപോലുള്ള പദ്ധതിയാണ്. ഏതായാലും സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഗവൺമെന്റ് ആരും കമ്മീഷൻ വാങ്ങുന്നതിനാണ് ആക്ഷേപമില്ല. CPM ആരും കമ്മീഷൻ വാങ്ങി
നമുക്ക് തുടങ്ങാം. കുറച്ചുകൂടെ വെയിറ്റ് ചെയ്യാം.
24. Yeah, wait for 2 minutes. $705.
Okay, Acha. Okay.
Okay, നമുക്ക് സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യാം.
Okay, Acha. Good evening, one and all. Welcome to the second session of Teen Talks held by Salem Automa Church. So, first of all, I would like to welcome back Paul Jacob, fondly known as Dinu to everyone. For those who weren't there for the last session, a quick introduction. But before that, I request our assistant vicar, Reverend Dinu John, to kindly lead us in opening prayer.
ഞങ്ങളെ അതിവാത്സല്യമായി സ്നേഹിക്കുന്ന ഞങ്ങളുടെ നല്ല ദൈവമേ, സ്വർഗീയ പരമപിതാവേ, ഈ നല്ല സന്ധ്യയ്ക്കായി നന്ദിയോടെ ഞങ്ങൾ നിന്നെ സ്തുതിക്കുന്നു. ഒരാഴ്ചക്കാലം അവിടുത്തെ കരുണ അനുഭവിച്ചറിയുവാൻ ഞങ്ങളെ സഹായിച്ചല്ലോ. അനർത്ഥങ്ങളിൽ നിന്ന് ആപത്തുകളിൽ നിന്നൊക്കെയും ഞങ്ങളെ അവിടുന്ന് വിടുവിച്ചതിനാൽ നന്ദിയോടെ സ്തോത്രം അർപ്പിക്കുന്നു. ദൈവമായ കർത്താവെ, നിന്റെ നിരന്തരമായ കൂട്ടായ്മ അനുഭവിച്ചറിയുവാൻ ഈ നാളുകളിൽ ഞങ്ങളെ സഹായിക്കണമെന്ന് പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. ഞങ്ങളുടെ ജീവിതത്തിന്റെ അനുദിന ജീവിതത്തിന്റെ ഓരോരോ കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഞങ്ങൾ ഇടപെടുമ്പോൾ നിന്നിൽ വളരുവാൻ, നിന്റെ സൗഖ്യം അനുഭവിച്ചറിയുവാൻ, നിന്നുള്ള ആശ്രയബോധം അനുഭവിച്ചറിയുവാൻ ഞങ്ങളെ സഹായിക്കണം പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. നിന്റെ മഹത്വവും തേജസ്സും ഞങ്ങളുടെ ജീവിതത്തിലും ഞങ്ങളുടെ ദൈനംദിന ജീവിതത്തിലും അനുഭവിച്ചറിയുവാൻ സഹായിക്കണം പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. ഞങ്ങളുടെ ജീവിതത്തെ ഞങ്ങൾ വിലയിരുത്തുമ്പോൾ പലതരം അനുഭവങ്ങളിലൂടെ ഞങ്ങൾ യാത്ര ചെയ്യേണ്ടതായിട്ട് വരുന്നു. ആശയക്കുഴപ്പങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടാകുന്നുണ്ട്. പലതരം വെല്ലുവിളികൾ ഞങ്ങളുടെ ജീവിതത്തിൽ നേരിടേണ്ടതായിട്ട് വരുന്നു. ഇവിടെയൊക്കെയും ദൈവത്തോട് ചേർന്ന് നിൽപ്പാൻ, ദാനിയേലിനെ പോലെ, ശദ്രക്കിനെ പോലെ, മേശക്കിനെ പോലെ, അബേദ്നെഗോവിനെ പോലെ ഒക്കെ എല്ലായ്പ്പോഴും ദൈവത്തോട് ചേർന്ന് നിൽപ്പാൻ, ദൈവത്തിൽ തന്നെ ആശ്രയിപ്പാൻ, ദൈവാനുഗ്രഹത്തോടെ ജീവിപ്പാൻ ഞങ്ങളെ സഹായിക്കണം പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. ആ സാക്ഷ്യത്തിന്റെ ഉന്നതമായ ദർശനം ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് നൽകണമെന്ന് പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. ദൈവമായ കർത്താവെ, ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് ശാലേം ഇടവകയായിട്ട് ലഭിച്ച എല്ലാ നന്മകൾക്കായി നന്ദിയോടെ സ്തോത്രം. കഴിഞ്ഞ കാലങ്ങളിൽ ലഭിച്ച എല്ലാ ആത്മീയ അനുഭവങ്ങൾക്കായി, സൗഖ്യത്തിനായി, വളർച്ചയ്ക്കായി നന്ദിയോടെ സ്തോത്രം. അതിൻ്റെ എല്ലാ മുഖാന്തരങ്ങളെ ഓർത്ത് നിന്നെ സ്തുതിക്കുന്നു. ഇടവകയായി നിന്റെ സന്നിധിയിൽ വീണ്ടും അടുത്തു വരുന്നു. ഈ ദിവസങ്ങളിലൊക്കെ ഈ പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ലോകമെങ്ങും പ്രതിസന്ധികൾ നേരിട്ടുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന സാഹചര്യത്തിൽ ഞങ്ങൾ ലോകത്തിന്റെ പല ഭാഗങ്ങളിലായിരിക്കുന്ന ഞങ്ങൾ ഒരുമിച്ച് കർത്താവെ ഈ ഒരു പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിൽ അടുത്തു വന്ന് ദൈവസന്നിധിയുടെ അനുഗ്രഹത്തെ പറ്റി ചിന്തിക്കുന്നതിന്, ധ്യാനിക്കുന്നതിന് ഒക്കെയും ലഭിച്ചിരിക്കുന്ന നല്ല സാവകാശത്തിനായി സ്തോത്രം. ഈ ടീം ടോക്കിന് നേതൃത്വം നൽകുന്ന പ്രിയ മകനായിട്ട് സ്തോത്രം. കഴിഞ്ഞ ആഴ്ചയിൽ ആവശ്യമായ നേതൃത്വം നൽകിയല്ലോ. ഇന്നും അവിടുന്ന് ഒരുക്കി കൊണ്ടുവന്നിരിക്കുന്നതിനാൽ സ്തോത്രം അർപ്പിക്കുന്നു. ഇന്നത്തെ ഈ ഞങ്ങളുടെ കൂടിവരവിനെ അനുഗ്രഹമാക്കണമേ എന്ന് പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. മകനോടിന്റെ നാവനോട്, ബുദ്ധിയോട് അവിടുന്ന് കൂടെ ഇരിക്കണമേ. ദൈവത്തിൽ നിന്ന് കേൾക്കുവാൻ ഞങ്ങളെ സഹായിക്കണമേ. ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഹൃദയങ്ങളെ അത് സ്പർശിക്കുവാൻ ദൈവമേ അത് സഹായിക്കണം എന്ന് പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. ഇന്ന് ഇവിടെ ആയിരിക്കുന്ന എല്ലാവരെയും നിന്റെ കാര്യങ്ങളിൽ ഏൽപ്പിച്ച് പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കും. വ്യത്യസ്തമായ ജീവിതാനുഭവങ്ങളിലൂടെ കടന്നു പോകുന്നു. ഞങ്ങൾ കർത്താവെ ഒരുപക്ഷെ അറിയാത്ത ജീവിതാനുഭവങ്ങളിലൂടെ, പ്രതിസന്ധികളിലൂടെ, ഭാരങ്ങളിലൂടെ ആരെങ്കിലും കടന്നു പോകുന്നെങ്കിൽ കർത്താവ് വചനത്തിലൂടെ അവിടുന്ന് സൗഖ്യമായിക്കണം പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. പ്രിയച്ഛനായിട്ട് സ്തോത്രം, ചുമതലക്കാർക്കായിട്ട് സ്തോത്രം. എല്ലാവരെയും നിന്റെ കാര്യങ്ങളിൽ ഏൽപ്പിച്ച് പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. നന്മകളാൽ നിറയ്ക്കണമേ. അല്പസമയം അവിടുത്തെ പാദപീഠത്തിലായിരിക്കുന്നു. സഹായിക്കണമേ. യേശുവിന്റെ നാമത്തിൽ തന്നെ ആമേൻ.
So, before we begin, just a quick recap on what we did last week. Last session we dealt mostly on the conflicts that we as youth face, be it in terms of our faith, the Bible, or the issues that we face on a day-to-day basis. So this session, Dinu Achichan will be dealing with the challenges that we as youth face, be it in terms of peer pressure, in terms of relationships or addictions or anything else of that sort. So once again, Dinu Achicha, thank you so much for being with us, for doing this, and over to you now.
Thank you, Fabi, once again, and thank you, Achin, and Dinu Achin and James Achin. And I would like to once again praise God and to thank God for this wonderful privilege. It's really good to be back for the second second Team Talk session as part of the ongoing Salem Talk series. Now, this week we'll be talking of, as Febby mentioned, on challenges that we face. If you remember last week, we talked about some of the conflicts, right, with regard to God. Does God exist? The Bible itself, and then the faith and the doubts. And we talked about John the Baptist. Then Christianity, is it the only religion? How do you convince others? Should you convince others? And then creation, all those kind of things, right? So this, but last week, during the earlier part of the session, I had encouraged people to be interacting through talking. But as the session progressed, I understood why it was not practical, given various factors. And as I saw the private chats come in, I quickly realized that we need to redefine interaction probably in a virtual medium. So I could see how comfortable the young ones were putting in their questions, and many of them were very, very serious questions, sincere questions. At the end of it, there were about 14 questions during that 45, 50 minutes, and I could only address about 9 of them for want of time, right? And I apologize because I did not take a screenshot of those questions, so I missed the remaining questions. But a couple of them actually called me after that on WhatsApp after the session. Even a middle-aged parent also called me. And so I thought that was very encouraging. So if you do have some questions that we can continue discussions, please continue to reach out to, we can have a chat on WhatsApp or whatever, right? And I will be sharing my WhatsApp details. So one feedback we received last week was that the people did not realize that it was actually an interactive session. Many did not realize that the questions that I was reading out was actually raised by our young ones on the chat session. So it was not interactive in the traditional sense, but it was indeed interactive. And I must say, I was personally very encouraged, as I mentioned earlier. It was much more than I expected. Yeah, so what we will do differently for the session is to share the questions visually. So I'll share up the questions, and when we move on to another question, I'll copy it from chat. I will not obviously copy the person who's asking. I'll keep it still anonymous, but we will share it so you can see the question that we are discussing, right? So this week we'll be talking of challenges, and I would like to start off, if I talked about this middle-aged person who called me, and we discussed on something which is quite close to my heart. And I think we can start off with that question today. I'm going to share the session right now and see if we can get it going. Can you see my screen? Yeah. So what I will do is, hopefully, I will put up the question here, and then we can discuss that. Right? Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So this question that was asked was, as I mentioned, it is something which has bothered me a lot, and the question was this: what can we do to prevent so many of the young generation turning away from God, right? And it's a very, very pertinent question, and I can understand why, as a middle-aged parent with maybe teen children, he is concerned about that. I think the main reason, or what we can do, or before we ask what we can do to prevent them turning away, I think we maybe take a step back and understand, or try to understand why they're turning away from God. Right now, I think part of the reason, or part of the fault, if we can call it that, lies in us. And when I say us, I mean starting from me, right? As parents, as elders, as archons, as bishops, I am afraid that maybe, okay, and this is a personal perspective, maybe we have failed to set an example, or we are failing to set an example, right? If you look at the various things that are happening and you hear around us, especially with respect to a church context, you know what I mean, right? But just look at ourselves, right? What example are we setting, right? When you come to church, and then I know this, when I talk to my children, they share some of these things, right? About you go to church, and some of the stuff that I see happening in church, the gossiping, the shaming and all that. And then when we come back, sometimes we talk about Achins, we talk about how the sermon was not good. All these kind of things don't really give these children a nice impression about it. And I don't think we can blame them for being disillusioned in some way. So I think one reason, okay, this may not be the primary reason, but one reason which we should introspect, and each of us needs to do something about it sincerely, is to look at how, as are we setting an example, right? What are we doing? So that's one reason I can think. The other reason is, I think, the whole education system that our children are being exposed to, they are given a very one-sided perspective of how science and religion, and how that is the only thing that matters, and anything related to theology and religion is probably almost nonsense or foolish, almost, if somebody believes in a god, right? So that is a kind of teaching that is, and again, the children spend so much time in church, in the schools, and I don't blame them if they get that message deep down in their hearts. So that's probably one of the other reasons, right? So I would ask us as parents to look at ourselves. What are we showing, right? What are the examples we are showing? How do we define our own success, right? I say that I am independent, I am self-made. Do we show our children that I'm dependent on God? Are we showing that dependence, or are we just beating our chest and showing off all the big things and the strong things that I can do? And I think as parents, as elders, we should, and this is where the family prayer time becomes very important. Rather than just a time for people to get together, I firmly believe, especially when the children are very small, 3-4 years, the sight of their father and mother on their knees, looking up and crying out to God, will put in their hearts a sense that the father and mother, who they look at probably as heroes, as young ones, no, these people are also looking out, and they depend on God. And I think that is the best example that can give. Show that we are weak, and we are vulnerable. Be not afraid to show our vulnerability, and show how God is strengthening us, right? I think when we do that, we will be setting the right example, and that's a beginning we can do. But will that stop people going away? I don't know, right? And it's not only turning away from God. I think, especially in the context of Singapore, I'm not sure how much is it in India. People not only turn away from church, they probably turn away from our church, but go to another church. Right now, that's still not so bad, in the sense that at least they are in a church. But many people turn away from God. And I think the reason for that, okay, apart from the other reasons that we talked about, one primary reason is that when a child says or affirms that he is a child of God, immediately that puts a set of boundaries on you as a person. If you say you are a child of God, then you cannot do the many things that you otherwise would want to do. Right? Your freedom is gone. You can't go out with the friends that the way you did. You can't enjoy, quote unquote, in the way that you want to do, if you call yourself a son of God or a child of God. So what is the easiest way to do is to say, I don't believe in God. If when once I push away God, I can do what I want with my life. So I don't really believe, okay, and I've talked to a lot of people, I don't believe that at the core, the problem is that they don't believe in God, but the core reason is that they don't want to believe in God, because then they can do whatever they want with their lives. And this is just a person's perspective, right? So that's the reason why I think many people are turning away from God. And what can we and the church, what can we do as parents? I think we just have to fall on our knees and pray, right? I don't know if we can stop completely, hold them and tie their hands and legs and keep them in church, right? And that's beating the point anyway, right? So we have to be setting good examples. We have to be showing that we are not the strong men that they think out to be, or women we are dependent on God. And in some way, that sense of dependence will fall into them, and hopefully, bring them back to a relationship with God. And this whole aspect about being a child of God means that I'll have to give up my freedom. That I believe is one of the main reasons. Okay, so that is the first question. Yeah, I have another question here. Let me just copy paste this. Do we really need to? Okay. Can you see the question? Do we really need to attend church? Is it okay to, okay, this is the question that we were just discussing. Is it okay to attend another church? I get disappointed with what I see happening in church, right? Do we really need to attend church? I think we should take again a step back and just to answer this, why do we attend church? If you ask yourself, sit back and ask, why is it that you attend church? And then I'm sure we will get the answers. Yeah, I go to church to pray. I go to church to listen to the word of God. Be in communion with worshippers. And typically, when you ask that question, I think many of the answers will be more about I go to get certain things, right? I go to listen to the word of God. I go to receive communion. I go to be strengthened, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But the problem, I think, with going to church to receive only is that there is a risk of expectation mismatch. You go with an expectation that I'm going to get this from church, and when something goes wrong, you are discouraged, right? But if you go rather with the attitude that I am going to give rather than receive something, then I think the whole perspective changes, right? You're going to give your worship, you're going to give your praise, you're going to give your offering, you're going to offer yourself. So it doesn't matter what sermon is really talked, is preached. It doesn't matter if the choir sings well or not. It doesn't matter if the projector crashed today. It doesn't matter if the curtain fell down, right? Or whatever happens. Once I was in Salem, the curtain fell down. But it doesn't, all that becomes irrelevant. What matters is I am there in church to actually give myself, right? And when that perspective happens, it becomes very different. You will not be disappointed, because I don't care really, I'm not saying that you should not go to get anything, because that is important, but I would urge you to turn the perspective to go, right? And when you look at it that way, yes, I need to attend church because I need to go and offer myself. And then you can ask, can't I do it in sitting at home, right? But there is a need, as Jesus himself, right? You see, he goes to the synagogue, day in, day out. As a devout Jew, he does that. So there is something to be done in a corporate communion kind of fellowship. It's not only about you. You go to church, you are expected to edify others. You're expected to lift others. There is a responsibility on you when you go to church. So there is a very, very, that's why we as our forefathers and foremothers have made it a habit to go to church, right? I know I'm proud to say that the Mahatma tradition is one tradition where it's almost if you don't go to church on Sunday, as children, you're brought up to feel that there's something missing, right? That's how I was brought up, right? So that's why I think it is important that we attend church. Is it okay to attend another church? I personally don't think that's again, this is a personal perspective, right? Personally, if you ask me, is there anything that ties me to the Marthoma church? Is there something that I strongly put up as an identity, a Marthoma identity? Personally, I may say no. I am in the Marthoma church because I was born in a Marthoma family. I went to Sunday school. I grew up as a Marthomite, and I see no reason why I should go. right? I met my Savior while I was in this church, right? And then there is no reason why I should, why would I go to another church? Because I don't get something in this church, and I hope I will get something, that thing which I'm missing, I hope I will get it there. You go there, two months later, you realize that you're in the same boat. Then you do, what do? You go to another church. Where does it end? It does not end. So the church is, and you will ask, right? You get disappointed. It's a very good thing. Yes, I also sometimes get disappointed with what I see happening in the church, right? But that is not an excuse to just running away will not help solve it. You have to understand what you can do to remove in some way the disappointment that you have, right? And why are there so many things that are ungodly, let's call it that, or which you wouldn't associate with the church? Why does it happen in church? Because the church is made of people like you and me, right? We are all fallen people. We will sin. We will do these things. You cannot expect everything to be wonderful in church, because no, it's made up of you and me, and we will show out our true character, right? Whether it is me as laymen, achans, bishops, we are all not perfect, right? We will all have our faults, and sometimes these come up, right? And that's why sometimes you get this, but it happens everywhere. So the answer is not to run away. The answer is to stay where you are, I encourage. And as young men and women, you can do things to make it better, right? That's what you should be looking. The easiest thing is to run away, saying, I saw this, I don't like it, I'm running away, right? But I would like to suggest that is not the case, right? Okay, good question here. Why is it that a youngster why is it that a youngster watches a movie for 3 hours without getting bored, and why the interest level to attend church is low? Okay. The short answer is the movie is interesting and the church is probably not interesting, but that's saying the answer in jest in a little lighter sense, right? I don't know if we should make, when you're younger children, when you are 5, 6, 7 years old, yes, you can make church interesting by having some activities in Sunday school, drawing, painting, which wants these, which encourages children to come to church. But I'm not personally sure that if you come to church because it is an interesting thing, then I'm not sure it is meeting really the church as you grow up. So when you're 10, 15 years old, I don't think you should come to church because it is interesting. As we said before, I think you should come to church because you want to go to church. Because on this Sunday morning, I want to go there. I want to close my eyes, lift up my hands, and thank God for what He has given me. So once you get that perspective, and I think that will only come once you have had your encounter and once you've realized, what Jesus it means to you. Once you do that, then you don't need an interesting church to go to. You just need a church, the church that you've grown up in, born up in, grew up in. That is enough. You go. And the answer to this question is that the perspective is not right, I would say. And I'm talking of adult perspectives, okay, not young. As young children, Sunday school children, you go to meet your friends sometimes, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, it's a big part of growing up, that fellowship that you have with Sunday school children. But at a certain stage, you have to realize that church is more than a place where you come and meet friends. It is also a place where I come and give myself. I come and offer myself. I look around and see who in church needs, the little help that I can give, a word of encouragement that I can give, a smile that I can give, right? So I hope I've answered the question. I don't recommend, and we see many attempts in church today around the churches, many denominations, I'm not picking out or pointing out, which is trying to make the church interesting, right? It becomes, and sometimes I feel bad and sad about it. It's no more than a big, concert which is happening. And people find it interesting and people go. But are they really getting what they should from that church? I don't know. I'm not because I've not really attended those things. And so I may not be the best judge to say, but I can at least say this, that having an interesting church is probably not enough. You need much more than that. Okay. Thank you. We've got another question here. I think this is a question we somehow addressed last week in some sense. So I'll quickly go through this and maybe we can move on to the next, because I have a few more questions here. Oops. If I am a Hindu, but I do all the good deeds for the mankind and I go to temple for prayers, but I've never ever heard or know about Christ, when I die, will I receive eternity? Okay. I could have answered that question. If I could have answered that question, then I would be God, right? When I die, if a person who has not done good, he has not heard about Christ, when I die, will I receive eternity? As I said, I don't know. And we touched upon this. You go to a friend's party, he has invited you, they go there and you see somebody, a friend who you don't expect to be there, right? And I talked last week of how it is not your party, it is that friend's party. He has invited, he has the right, or she has the right to invite whoever he or she wants to invite for his party. It's not for you to question whether that person is worthy of a place there, right? And if you look at it that way, you do all the good deeds, and I think the Bible talks about there are other sheep, right, which which will come into my fold, right? There is a conscience. So it is up to God. I don't know, but as far as we know, we have seen Christ, we have experienced Christ. For us, we have to accept Jesus. But for people who have not heard, God may have another way of accepting it. I don't know. Okay, the answer to that question is I don't know. But all I can say that it is God's party, and He has a freedom, He has a privilege to invite whoever He wants to invite. Adding to the previous question, do I need to be in a specific domain to practice my faith? I'm hoping I understand the question correctly. Adding to the previous question, do I need to be in a specific domain to practice my faith? If you're talking about being a Christian, right? And again, we addressed this question last week. Yes, Jesus has said He is the way. Now, it's a slight contradiction from the previous one because many people don't know. But if you have come to know, and most of us are privileged and lucky enough to have known Jesus, then Jesus is the only way, right? So, isn't it unfair to characterize the other religions as not true, as we talked last week, right? When you say something is true, absolutely true, then that means that, unfortunately, by definition, truth is exclusive, right? So if something is true, then something else will not be true, right? If you say the sun rises in the east, then the sun cannot rise in the west. So if Jesus says, I am the truth, the way, and the life, either you believe Him, right? If you believe Him, then you have to accept that what He says is true. Now, if you don't believe Him, then it's a different discussion altogether, right? Then you have all these kind of things, right? So as far as we are concerned, as people who have come to understand, then Jesus is the only way. Okay. The next question. Yeah. Oh, he was talking of denomination. Okay. He clarified the question in this domain was denomination. Okay. And I don't think, okay, Jesus did not create denominations. In fact, Jesus did not even create a religion, to be fair. Right? There was no religion. It was created after. So I don't think, okay, again, it is for God to decide. But as I said, I'm a Marthomite because I was born a Marthomite. Somebody's a Jacobite, an Orthodox, or CSI, or whatever, because they were born there, right? Does that make them anything else? I don't know. I can be a Marthomite and I can do things which are not in line with God, right? In fact, on this one, I would like to share, and it is something which just touched me a lot. I used to have a notion that the Catholic way is some way not right, until I went through an experience in my life which changed that. I had a friend of mine whose young son, 5 years old, he fell into the swimming pool and he was put in ICU, and he spent 1 month in ICU, almost brain dead. But every day we would go from our offices, we would go to this ICU, sit down. There were 15, 20 of us. Everybody was, it was a Catholic group. So everybody was Catholic. I would be there. And to be frank, the kind of devotion and the kind of sincerity I've seen in those prayers, I have not experienced, to be fair, much else. So that gave me another perspective. It is easy to say one denomination is not bad sitting outside, but when you go there, you can understand, and you will understand much more, right? So I'm not one to question any denomination. I'm pretty sure Jesus will not. Okay, but if you do, regardless of denomination, it depends on how you follow or how much you value what Jesus teaches you. Okay, I'll skip one or two questions because I think I've addressed this. One is talking about the education system due to the study load and all. Is that one reason? I definitely think so. Yes, not the only reason. That it plays a part, right? Sundays is a day for tuitions, right? There is this class, that class, this class. Where do I have time for Sunday school? Somehow something is gone. Somehow something is missing, right? Our priorities are not right. If you want to talk of our education system without a Christian perspective, I can spend a whole day talking of that. I'm so frustrated with the education system. The whole concept of examinations, the whole concept of drilling into people and vomiting it out on an exam. I don't believe in an exam. And again, especially for a Sunday school, I don't believe exam should be there. Okay, I'm a Sunday school teacher myself. Okay, apologies to Achans and who may differ with you, but I don't believe that in a Sunday school context, at least, that there is a first and a last with God. And if as a teacher, 1 year you spend with the children, you have not been able to ascertain their level, then what are you going to get? What are you going to get on a one exam of 1 hour, for which they have previously sat the whole night and they've done some studies and memorize something like that. It doesn't matter, right? So that's just a personal thought. I believe that the education system, not only the load, really needs to change. I understand there's some changes happening now, and I hope it is for the good. Okay. There are many norms. Okay, this is an interesting question. It's about women in church. Okay, this is quite a big question, so I hope you can see. There are many norms like women having to cover their head, women not allowed on the altar, and they're certainly not ordained. Now, when these questions are raised to the country, hushed or the topic is changed, I've seen church giving importance, authority to the rich who give the highest amount of money, the highest position of respect. And quite recently, around June, we saw Justy Alex, a member of the Marthoma Church, resigning from the church. Following her, many other youths of the church. When all this, how are we supposed to still keep faith in church and the morals it teaches us? Okay. I think there are 2 or 3 issues addressed here. One is about women in church. Okay, and I may not be, I'm not a theologian. I will just say from what I have understood. Okay, if you look at disciples of church, and one usually what we say is, this the church had Jesus had only male disciples to go around with him, 12 of them. But if you look at it, no, Jesus had always, and we know some very famous personalities, right, who were with Jesus, accompanying him all the way. And if you look at the cross itself, right, all his disciples, the so-called male disciples, had fled, and there were only a few women, and John standing at the foot of the cross. And women were given, even Paul, I believe in Romans, he lists a whole list of people who were women who were given various important ministries in the world. So how is it that our church does not accept women on the altar, or ordination and all that? Again, this is my personal perspective. I believe it's a question of time. Okay, there are some. It's probably because of traditions and many things. Okay, I don't see anything biblical for women to be in the ministry. Okay, and I believe it's only a question of time. We've seen many denominations have already accepted it. I believe very soon that we will have Marthoma women Achin. That's my personal belief. Okay, I don't know when it is going to happen, but as long as it is there, it is not there, I don't think it makes a difference, at least to me. Okay, there is no degradation that we see in the Mahatma Church, I believe, of women. No, we have, the Sevika Sangam was started 120 to give that kind of an equality to women, right? I question now, do we need the Sevika Sangam anymore? Because, that old purpose, why don't we have a Sevika Sangam, right? Why don't we have something for men, right? No, but we do have, and there are particular contexts where it was created. But I think this whole question about women and, it's question. I believe it's a question of tradition, and it will change. I think I'd see no reason why it should not change. That's my perspective. You can differ, and maybe Achin can shed some more light when you have time with him. We saw Justy Alex. I'm not sure. I think this is a person in Delhi. If I did read, many of our, as we said, there is a problem. The easiest thing is to resign and go. No, I'm not commenting on whether what Justy did was right or wrong, right? But there are many ways you can address a problem. Yes, she felt that resigning and going was right, perfect. But probably another way, a more creative and more proactive way is to stay there and see what we can do to better it. If there's a wrong, to better it sitting and standing within the church. And that's what I would encourage people to do. Yeah. Okay. This is again a question that today we witness an increasing number of youths turning away from traditional churches. Okay, we talked about this. What are your views again on adult baptism and the term born again? What sets apart the Marthoma Church in your opinion? How do I explain this to non-Marthomites? Okay, as I've already mentioned this, the last part of the question, I don't believe that there is, personally to me, that there is a big, sometimes we say there's a heritage and tradition and all this. I don't subscribe to that view. I believe it's much more related to how you relate. You have a personal relationship with Christ. Obviously, there are lots of good things that have happened in our church, which have reformed some of the bad practices that have crept in. All that is fine, Reformation and all. But in my mind, I wouldn't say that being a Marthomite is the pinnacle of everything. No, as we know, there are problems in our church. There are problems in all churches, and there is no point in just everybody being uniform, right? God, it is diversity. That's how we can celebrate, right? There may be slightly different traditions here. The point is not to get it uniform. The point is to get united. I really am pained when there is disunity. I wouldn't claim for uniformity, but I would really want unity. As children of God, we cannot be fighting. We cannot be shouting at each other and standing on roads. And that one I can't adjust. I can't agree. Okay. What are your views on adult baptism and the term born again? Born again, I believe, as the Bible very again, this is a term which has been, as when I was growing up, it was so much hyped, right? And somebody asked me, I remember even now, are you born again? And for 10 seconds, I didn't know what to answer, right? Am I born again? Am I not born again? Right? As far as I realize it now, if you have accepted Jesus into your life, right? And if that acceptance has made a change in your life, you have become a new person in some way, you are born again, right? You don't have to go to a specific, as a Marthomite, you can be born again. So if you have accepted Christ, that is the thing. And if that Christ has come into your heart and it has made a difference in you, you are born again. Okay. Adult baptism, child baptism, it's a long discussion. Okay. And baptism, right? Like, you put a child to kindergarten. That is not the end of his education. That is the beginning of his education, right? In some way, baptism is just an initiation into the community of the church. It does not. That is not the big thing or end thing. What do you do after that? You go to Sunday school. You become a youth. Yeah, you become an adult. You have children. That is what is more simple. I think sometimes we get stuck up on technicalities, right? Is it adult is right, the child is right? No, in the way it is, and there are so many justifications for both things, right? And which people quote. I really don't like to spend too much time on this because I believe it is just semantics in some way. Now people may fight over this, right, and argue till the cows come home for on these kind of things, but I personally am not dragged into this. I believe that regardless of what it is, whether you're baptized as an adult or a child, if you have accepted Christ, you are born again, right? We addressed the thing of the youths turning away from tradition, so I won't go into that. Church asks children to come to church and Sunday school and Sunday. Parents compel them for tuition. How to face this challenge? Exactly. So, how to face this challenge? My challenge is to the parents themselves, right? Uh, yes, you are sending your kids away to school for tuition because you believe that something is important to you, but you have to be convinced that sending them to Sunday school is equally important. If you are not convinced, and in some way you keep drilling this message to your children that it's okay to skip Sunday school, you better go for your tuitions because otherwise you won't pass your entrance examination. We are to blame, as I talked earlier, right? It is us as parents, we have a lot to blame, right? Church asks children to come to church and Sunday school. It's not really the church asking. The church is asking for the children's benefit. It should be you wanting to send your children to Sunday school because you believe that they need to learn about this person from Nazareth called Jesus. They need to learn about God, right? Regardless of what the church, do you think the church can force you to send your children? Yes, they may. Achin may call you and scold you sometimes, and you may send them for one or two Sundays, right? But that's not going to make a difference. It has to be you as a parent have to convince yourselves that yes, I need to send them for my tuitions, but I need to send them to Sunday school. It is equally, if not more important. I would say it's more important personally. Because if you don't realize the way you have to, grow up as children of God, then no amount of education is going to help you. And that sadly is somehow we are seeing the effect of that in today's world, right? People are educated. People know what calculus is, what this is, what that is, but they have no compassion, right? They don't know what it means to be a human being anymore, right? They can kick somebody, they can stab somebody in the back to achieve their own personal interests. That's not what education should be about. Right? Okay. How does the biblical text apply to the modern times, specifically with gender roles, gay marriages, and transgenders, etc.? How does the biblical text apply to? Okay, let me take one of these. Marriage is a theme that I would wanted to spend some time, but we'll probably use this as a segue into that. Gender roles we already talked about. I don't believe Christ or God distinguishes between man and woman. Sometimes we say God is a father. Why is not the mother God? There was a movie which came, The Shack. I believe it's called A Shack, where God is portrayed as a mother God, right? And there are people, and many Achans now don't say Father God, they say Parent God, right? I've heard that usage, right? But Jesus himself calls Father his Father, right? So. But through the Bible, you can see instances of God representing himself as a motherly figure, as a hen covers his chicks. That's how the compassion of God. It's a mother. It's a feminine. Definitely, it's a feminine thing, right? So I don't believe that God really has a gender in that sense, and I don't believe that God distinguishes between men and women. That's the first one, right? Gay marriage. We should come back to the original ideal of what a marriage is. That is, we see in Genesis 2, right? God brings a woman to a man and says, "This is the two." That was the first marriage in Eden. That is the ideal of marriage between a man and a woman. Okay, and immediately I can hear, at least in some people, right? But that's not true. What about people who are feeling? I'm saying what the Bible teaches. Okay, marriage is between a man and a woman, and sex again, a big topic, is to be within the confines of marriage. Okay, anything which is against that biblical standard, I think, is not right. Now, that does not mean that you go out, and I'm sure in today's world, even in my Sunday school class, I'm teaching grade 9 students, okay, standard 9. And I am I'm surprised by the amount of gay and lesbian children, okay, in school in standard 9. This is in Singapore. I don't know how it is in India. Okay, it's a problem. Now, what do you do? And so my kids ask me, how do I handle this? What do should I keep away from them, right? And the problem with this is that homosexuality, for instance, has been made to be such a big sin. It is almost being put up as the biggest sin, right? Homosexuality is wrong. According to the Bible, it is wrong. Okay? It is wrong just as stealing is wrong. It is wrong just as killing somebody is wrong. It is a sin according to God, right? So when you see somebody doing something which is not right, what would you do? If you're sincerely close to that person, you would go and advise him to if you see somebody is stealing, for instance. If you're close enough to that person, you would go and tell him, you shouldn't be doing this. There are repercussions. This is not how, you're not supposed to steal. In that say, there's nothing which is the highest level of sin or anything like that, right? Homosexuality is not right in God's eyes, and you have if you're close enough. Now, if you're not close enough, I would advise you not even to go and interfere and push yourself into that situation and tell them that is wrong, because that is surely something that they will not take it. You have to be friends with them first of all, right? So that's how it works. And it's not only homosexuality. As I said, sex is meant to be within the marriage. Anything outside the marriage is equally wrong. It could be heterosexuality. You're doing outside your marriage, you're going and having an adulterous relationship. It is as wrong as homosexuality, right? Before marriage, sex is meant to be within the marriage relationship. And the sooner our younger ones understand this, the better it is.
Hello, Achacha. This is Alan. So I have a conflict with that. The problem is, see, you are telling homosexuality is a sin, but
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of read a lot of articles about people who
Hmm.
are homosexual by birth or by situations.
Correct.
So you cannot call them as sinners, or you cannot call them, say, because it is something who they are, right?
Okay, this is a common Alan എന്നാണോ പറഞ്ഞ മോനെ?
Ellen, yeah.
Alan, and this is a common. I've heard this. I've had this discussions with lots of people.
No, because the reason is I've seen, I've read about parents take people, these children or these men and women to psychiatrists to change
Hmm.
them to being straight. But that
Yeah.
doesn't happen just like that. It's like some people are just born naturally to be homosexuals. So it's not something like,
Again, I
yeah,
don't. Sorry to cut you off, Alan, but
yeah,
in the interest of time, I will just. I understand where you're coming from.
sure.
The jury is still out. Okay, there is lots of studies have gone, and you have equal amount of cases which says that it is not that case. Okay, take it from me. I've got. It is not proven. Okay, that is the case. Okay, that is one thing. But I will tell you. Uh, you may have heard of somebody called Henry Nouwen. Okay, he was a priest, and 45 or towards when he was 45 50 years old, he confessed that he was a homosexual. And he says every day of his life he fought that temptation, but he could overcome it only because of the love that he had, or the love that he had for Christ. So my point is, this is a temptation in some way. Okay, there could be maybe a minuscule person which is, as you were say, born with it. Okay, but as I said, it is a lot of it is conditioning, and how the environment that is born, the abuse that people go through as children. So many of these factors are there. So you cannot just say all homosexuals. So if there is it is just like saying the case of abortion, right? And abortion, they say because rape is one. The number of rape situations which lead to pregnancies is very, very minuscule, and that is often put up as the reason why you should justify abortion, right? So I'm not saying that there could be a thing, but to put that all homosexuals are born that way, I think is not right, Alan. Is not correct. Okay, that's my take on it. We're not going to solve this, this difference of opinions here. We can talk about it, maybe on a separate line. But as far as I'm concerned, when I apply, the question was, how do I apply the biblical text? I believe that the biblical text is very clear. And it's not only homosexual. This is where people take it. Why don't you look at adulterous relationships in the same way? Why don't you say that is equally bad? Nobody talks about it. It's only the poor homosexuals that are good. So I'm saying you have to address, you can't keep them away. You have to look at them with the same way that you would look at others. You can't push them away. But this is a topic, where we need compassion more than anything. We cannot push them away. But I still stand on my ground that it is not right in the eyes of God. That's what I'm saying.
Achacha, if I could say
Yeah, Pradeep.
something. So there are instances where there are priests, especially in the US. I don't know about in India, but there are priests who have come out openly as gay, and their work, they have been doing tremendous work with the people in terms of spreading Christianity, talking about the Lord. And do you think, from that standpoint, is it okay to say that what these priests are doing is a sin?
It is a sin in the same. So talk of other priests. Forget gay priests. Do you think the other priests are not without sin? Every priest has a sin. I mean, every man has a sin. Forget that. So why are we putting this? My point is, why are you putting, just because yes, he is gay. He is gay. That doesn't mean that he cannot do the things that a priest can do, right?
No. So is it right to say that, oh, he might be the best person ever, or he might
Yeah.
have, he might be worthy of going to heaven,
Mhm.
but just because he's gay, do you think the Lord is going to differentiate and say that just because you're gay, you cannot enter the kingdom of God?
So this you have to understand. Again, I say, right? You will not enter the kingdom of heaven not only if you're gay, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven if you have an adulterous relationship. Try to see that, you know, what you have to define is what God intended with sex, right? And how anything out of that. So why I'm saying is we should not just pick up gayness or homosexuality and push that as one thing that will never be accepted. I'm telling you, if you have sacrilege the marriage covenant and gone out of it, you will be equally at problem with God. And for that matter, all of us are at problem with God, right? Which is why God himself had to come down and save us on the cross. So I believe that God's sacrifice will be enough if you accept him. But there is a problem when God says that this is what I intended, right? And there are enough textual references which talk about this. But I'm not saying, I understand what you're saying, Fabi and Alan, that, you know, that doesn't mean that what he does as a priest should be looked down upon. I don't think so, right? He has a problem, quote unquote, a problem which you are not agreeing with, but he has a situation which needs to be addressed, just as I have so many situations in my life which need to be addressed. Yeah, I would just like to, we've started 5 minutes late, so maybe we can take 5 minutes. I think we have to talk on marriage, okay? And marriage is a bit, there were no specific questions. They've got 1 or 2 more questions, but I think we don't have time for that. I really want to talk about marriage, especially when there are young ones, right? The amount of divorces that happen, I believe it's a problem. It's a big problem. And I want you guys to seriously, you know, consider what a marriage is, because you are all coming into that age where you will be very soon looking out for somebody to get married to. Your parents will be doing that, right? We have to understand what marriage is and what God intended again. See, marriage is a sacrament. We know that, right? It is a covenant, and I think you can get so many definitions of marriage all through anywhere. But I think Malachi gives the best. I believe he defines it as a covenant of companionship. A covenant of companionship, right? That means, what are you? The covenant is between you, your spouse, your husband or wife, and God. Those are the parties to the covenant. And what are you promising? You're promising that I'm going to stay with this person for the rest of my life. That is the marriage covenant, and we don't take it seriously, right? And why do so many marriages fall down? I believe that the primary reason, right? If you ask most couples now, why did you get married? Many of them will give you the reason, I believe, that, you know, the reason is we were in love and we got married, right? That's a common thing that we find now, because so many love marriages are happening, right? We were in love and we got, almost as if getting married is the next step to being in love. Now, the problem is this, right? Being in love is a feeling. Love is a feeling. I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm in love. I cannot be happy all the days of my life. I cannot be sad all the days of my life, right? Just in that same way, I cannot be in love, as all of us who are married will agree with that. You cannot be in love all the days of your life, the feeling of love. So if the reason you married was because you were in love, today you don't feel in love, what do? It makes logical sense to separate. That's what happens so much, because your marriage is founded on a fleeting, transient feeling. We need to base our marriage on, right? So that's what we cannot. So, but is there no position, or is there no place for love in marriage? Yes, there is. It is not the feeling of love, it is the choice of love. The feeling of love is more like a noun, it's a feeling. But what do you have to do with love? You have to choose to love. Once you make a covenant with and you get married, does not matter what happens. I choose to love my spouse even though I don't feel like it. Do you understand that? That's and the best way to look at it is a relationship that Christ has with us, the bride and the bridegroom. Do you think Christ loved us because we were worthy of his love? No, he loved us in spite of our sin. He loved us even while we were sinners, right? And if you are to picture that love of Christ who loved us while we were worthy, none of us is worthy enough, right? Somebody asks, uh, how will I find the perfect partner? There is no perfect partner. You have to get to know the person and make that person perfect. Which is better, love marriage or arranged marriages? Right? I had a love marriage, right? And obviously there are pros and cons, but friends, it does not matter how you come into the marriage, whether it is through love marriage or arranged marriage. What matters is what you do after you're married. Unfortunately, now we spend so much time on the wedding day, the planning for the wedding day. I shudder at the amount of preparations that go into the wedding day. If only we spend 10% of that seriousness with planning for what we do after the wedding. I dare say many of our marriages will not break down, right? We have to think of it as a serious stuff. Okay, and if you're going to planning to get married, don't ask the question, do I love him, do I love her, does he love me? The question to ask is, am I willing to make a promise to God that I will be with this person, I will choose to love this person for the rest of my life? If we can look at marriages not on the basis of love, love is there, but it is a choice of love, not the feeling, but focus on something more stronger and more firmer, I think we will all be able to save a lot more of our marriages. So I really think so. Begin praying for your spouses, young ones. Okay, it's never too early to do that. Pray that God will prepare your hearts to understand what a Christian marriage is all about, and to take it very seriously. Okay, so that I really wanted to share that, because I think that's a big thing, right? It's a covenant of companionship, and you have to stay there. There will be times in your marriages when it feels really low, right? Because the feeling of love is not there, but that doesn't mean anything. You have to stay in your marriage because you have made a promise, and the feeling will come back tomorrow, right? So let's not be fleeting in that, and transient in that whole thing. If you ask our parents, you know how they have lived through their marriages. There it's a give and a take. You make the marriage, you make the perfect partner. You don't find anybody who's perfect, right? Fabi, do we have time? I've got 3-4 more questions. How are we for time?
It's past 8, so I think we should wind up. If
Okay.
you could take a screenshot and probably
Yeah.
address it in a private space.
Okay, there are a couple of questions on depression. I think those were important ones. Why
Maybe
is
you could
God
take
not
one.
doing something about COVID-19? Okay, I really would like to have liked, but unfortunately we're running out for time. I leave it to you, Fabi. We can spend 5-10 minutes more, or you can wind up. It's up to you.
അച്ഛാ, നമുക്ക് എങ്ങനെയാ
About 8:15 we'll go, 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll probably take these 2 questions, which I think are very serious, and I'm glad that somebody asked this. Okay, just putting it up here. I see many of my friends falling into depression, and how can I help? Right? It's a very pertinent question, right? Especially as we read of so many things happening, right? Uh, the recent cases of young people with so much promise and potential, committing suicide and all that, right? Depression is not a phenomenon of today's age. There were people who were depressed as long as humans existed, right? You look at so many, Abraham Lincoln, Churchill, Martin Luther King, Charles Spurgeon, the prince of preachers, right? Van Gogh, Hemingway, I'm just naming a few which we know about, right? And we're famous. All throughout human history, depression has been a problem. Okay, and if you think about it, right, what is depression? It is not a small sad feeling that we have, right? It's not something very transient. It's something more than that, right? What really is it? Is it a feeling of loneliness? Is it being demoralized? I believe it's much more, right? Sometimes we feel sad at something that happens, but we get over it. Sometimes even when somebody who's loved one passes away, we are very sad, but sometimes we tend to get over it, right? So what is the difference? I think the difference is that if you have something to look forward to, then you can begin to think of getting out of it. But if you don't have anything to look forward to, and that is what we generally call hopelessness, right? By definition, I believe that depression, one of the the most main primary causes is hopelessness. And so by definition, if you have hope, I would tend to say that you will not be depressed. Okay, so is it as easy as that? If you have hope, we will not be. Why do we lose hope, and why do we get sad? I think there are 2-3 reasons, right? One, we want to get something so badly, right? But we don't get it. That leads us to sadness, right? I want to get that job. I want to get into that college. I want to marry somebody. We don't get it, and we get depressed. What happens? And sometimes we want something so badly, we get it, but then we realize that when we get it, it is not as we had made up in our minds. Really, it is not that fantastic. So we end up getting what we wanted, but we still are discouraged and disillusioned, right? And finally, the worst thing happens is we wanted something very badly. We prayed about it, we got it, and it was fantastic. Everything was perfect. And then we lose it. It really shatters us, right? So when you put all these 3 things together, and talking of depression as being, I hope I'm not simplifying. It's much more complicated than this. I'm just trying to say, as children, young men and women, have hope, okay? And that's Christian hope. You have a friend in Jesus who you can turn to with whatever problems you have. Whoever it is, who's looked down upon you, who's ignored you, who's rejected you, go to Jesus. That is the hope you have. As a child of God, you always have hope in Jesus. And as a child of God, try not to get it. What can you do to help people? Be there for that some person. Okay, you can almost, sometimes you don't realize it. Some people, they smile. Robin Williams, another class who made us all laugh so much, right? He had a big problem with depression. We don't know it. And so if you don't know it, but sometimes you can see the signs. Don't add to their reasons of depression. Don't add to their hopelessness. Try to give them hope, right? Just be there with your friends, and hopefully you can spot signs. Sometimes these people, they put things on social media, and you get the signs, but there's no listening ear to them. As a friend, what you can do is to go and help and talk to them and be with them. Okay, I know it's not a good enough, a full enough answer, but given, I would just take 5 more minutes to do one more question, which I think is an interesting one. Why is God not doing something about COVID-19? Okay. And this goes to the crux of so many, and this is not only COVID-19, dear friend, who you've asked us, right? You look at the Bible is full of questions of this nature. Why God? Why? It's a whole question of why. Why is God not doing it? Right? The question really is, and and it comes to faith and all that. The question really is, there will be bad times, there will be difficult times. That is a given. What do you do? There is no, and even Jesus himself asked the same question, right? Why, God? Why have you forsaken me? He did not get an answer, right? Sometimes the answers are beyond us, but that doesn't mean we leave it at that. The right question to ask is, why God? It's not why God, it's what do I do, God? Okay, now it is COVID-19. Now I'm in this bad situation, right? I could have asked why and sit and cry about it. No, but what will my response be to this question, to this situation, right? And that brings us to the question of prayer, right? We pray, God, help these people who are suffering from COVID-19. And prayer is another thing that we can talk a lot about, right? Prayer is really not just your supplications, right? When you pray, what happens, and I've read this somewhere, I don't know, remember where it is. What God does is he flips the question onto the prayer onto you, because God is now in each one of us. We are God's arms and God's legs and God's eyes and ears. When you say, God, help that person, God says, yes, I want to help him. What are you going to do about it? You prayed about it. You are my arms and my legs. Go and do something about it. So prayer is a risky business in that sense. It's very easy to sit in the confines of a living room and say, God, help them, and go and have a good night's sleep. Right? That is not the essence of prayer. The essence of prayer is to look upon a situation, feel bad about it or sad about it, bring it to God, and then accept God's task for you to go and address it. That is real prayer. Prayer that changes and prayer that transforms you. That should be prayer. I mean, we can have lots of other prayers, but I don't pray personally for any of my needs. And this is being very frank. I don't do that because, I know that my God knows what I need. And sometimes the things that I pray for may not be the best things for me, right? So there are lots of portions in the Bible which still ask you to pray, but I don't do it. All I say is I give thanks a lot, and that's it. And these kind of prayers where I see that there is a need, God give me the mind and the compassion and the mind to go and the will to go and do something about it. So why is God not doing something about it? The question to ask is, why are we not doing something about it, right? God can do, he can in a flick of his, instant, he can clean up COVID-19. Why is he not doing it? I don't know. Probably he's waiting for something to happen, right? As always, there is a time in God's plan. So many people suffer. Yes, unfortunately, we are in a fallen world. This will happen, right? There is something that if I knew that answer, again, as I said before, I'll be God. But the question is, what can you do in this situation? How can you go and help somebody who's suffering? And with social distancing, it may not be possible, but what can you do? Can you do something? COVID-19 may be a very difficult challenge for us to do something with physical, but you can do other things. You can call people, you can do this visual, stay close to them, comfort them, encourage them. Those are the things that you're expected to do. I'm sure in God's time, he will have an answer, but I don't know that answer. But I dare say, don't change that question a little bit. Let's not keep asking. It is human tendency to ask why. Let's instead ask the question, what? Jesus himself, as we talked, did not get an answer to the question of why, right? Job asked the question, why? Why? And instead, God comes and gives him a dialogue on how great he is and how awesome he is. You don't know what you're talking about, right? So the perspective is to change slightly. And I think and why don't you ask, why, God, have you blessed me so much? You ask a why when you have a problem. Have we ever asked God, why have you blessed me so much? Why have you taken care of me so well the past 30 years of my life? You don't talk about that why. There's no why. Slightly something wrong happens, and all of a sudden there's a flurry of questions of why, right? I strongly tell you, children, young ones, maybe you can change our perspective. There will be always problems. I'm not saying we are living in a world there will be problems, bad problems. But as a child of God, He has empowered you to go and do something about it. What can we do about it? Right? I've got a few more questions, which I will take a screenshot and then maybe address it directly with them, Fabi. I don't think it's already
Yeah.
8:20, I would guess, right? Thank you so much. It was really encouraging for me. I'm not sure I was able to address all the questions, and there were some conflicts and there were some differences of opinion. But the whole point is a dialogue, right? Let's understand each other's perspective. Thank you, Alan and Phoebe, for voicing out your question, and thank you for all the others who've chatted and asked questions, right? I really hope it would have at least opened up some kind of thoughts or pointers to think. It's a quest that you have to do on your own. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Achaja.
My
James,
email and my WhatsApp is there this time, just to make sure that people get it. It's on the screen. So anybody wants to get in touch with me, not that I have all the answers, but we can have a discussion on this. Please do that. Okay.
James, Achaja, closing remarks.
Okay. The last session will be on next Friday. I hope all of you will participate in the last session on 28th. Okay. പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കാം. ദൈവമായ കർത്താവേ, സ്വർഗ്ഗസ്ഥ പിതാവേ, ഈ നാളുകളിലൊക്കെയും ഞങ്ങൾ അനുഭവിക്കുന്ന അവിടുത്തെ ദിവ്യ കൃപകൾക്കായി സ്തോത്രം. ലോകമെങ്ങുമുള്ള പ്രതിസന്ധിയുടെ മധ്യത്തിൽ ഞങ്ങളും കടന്നു പോകുന്നു. ജീവിതാനുഭവങ്ങളിൽ ഞങ്ങൾ അനേകം വെല്ലുവിളികളെ നേരിടുന്നവരാണ്. വ്യക്തികളായി, കുടുംബമായി, സമൂഹമായിട്ടൊക്കെ ഞങ്ങൾ നേരിടുന്ന എല്ലാ ചാലഞ്ചസിനെയും ദൈവമേ നിന്റെ സന്നിധിയിൽ ഞങ്ങൾ സമർപ്പിക്കുന്നു. അവിടുന്ന് ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് ആലോചനക്കാരനായി വഴികാട്ടിയായിരിക്കണമേ. ഞങ്ങളാകേണ്ടതുപോലെ ആയിത്തീരുവാൻ ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് അവിടുന്ന് കൃപ നൽകണമേ. പ്രത്യേകമായി ഇന്നത്തെ ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഒരുമിച്ചുള്ള ഈ ഇന്ററാക്ഷൻ സെഷനിൽ അവിടുന്ന് ഞങ്ങളോട് കൂടെ ഇരുന്നതിനായി സ്തോത്രം. അനേകർക്ക് തങ്ങളുടെ ആകുലതകൾ ഒക്കെ പങ്കുവയ്ക്കുവാൻ അവസരം ലഭിച്ചു. ഒരുമിച്ച് അവയൊക്കെയും ചർച്ച ചെയ്യുവാനൊക്കെ നൽകിയ അവസരത്തിനായി നിന്നെ സ്തുതിക്കുന്നു. നേതൃത്വം കൊടുക്കുന്ന പ്രിയപ്പെട്ട ഡിനുവിന് വേണ്ടി പ്രത്യേകം സ്തോത്രം. നിന്റെ മകന്റെ ജീവിതാനുഭവങ്ങളിലൂടെ അനേകർക്ക് അനുഗ്രഹമായി തീരുവാൻ തുടർന്നും സഹായിക്കണമേ. പിന്നെ ഇതിൽ സംബന്ധിച്ച എല്ലാവരെയും, പ്രായഭേദമന്യേ എല്ലാവരെയും അവിടുത്തെ സന്നിധിയിൽ ഓർത്തും നിന്നെ സ്തുതിക്കുകയും ചെയ്യുന്നു. ദൈവമേ, അടുത്ത ആഴ്ചയിൽ ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് ഒരുമിച്ച് കൂടുവാൻ കൃപ നൽകണം. യേശുവിൻ നാമത്തിൽ ഞങ്ങളുടെ പ്രാർത്ഥന കേൾക്കുമാറാകണമേ. ആമേൻ. ഏകാദൈവത്തിന്റെ കൃപയും അനുഗ്രഹങ്ങളും വാഴ്വുകളും നാം എല്ലാവരോടും കൂടെ എല്ലായ്പ്പോഴും ഉണ്ടായിരിക്കുമാറാകട്ടെ. ആമേൻ.
Thank you all. We hope to see you next Friday.
Thank you.